So in terms of like what we do now, uh, so in terms of the clients that we've had, um, especially like community organizations, say for instance, now we start to work a lot more with community organizations. Uh, what do you think the problem is with community organizations, that what they're suffering with in this day and age?
Okay, so we've always worked with community organizations. Like if you remember, Saf, some of I think mine and your first thing together was a community project. I remember.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
you had like an old light that was from like, I don't know. I think you use it for like, I don't know, gardening or something. It's
Use
like
it
a
for
garden
gardening.
light. It was a garden light, and you were like, oh, it's a floodlight. I remember it's
It's
a
a
floodlight,
floodlight, yeah.
and you were trying to film a video for a community organization. And I remember at the time, like that's where we started. And like let's roll back 8-9 years ago. Community organizations had it very easy in terms of marketing because
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
all very new. Like people in the UK, they weren't used to having being marketed to for Islamic courses or even charity, for example. It was all very traditional, TV appeals and stuff like that. So when we came on the scene with video content, this was kind of like fresh. It was new, and community signups would do amazing. I remember we used to produce videos for clients, and there was no other metric we'd even ask them about, or they'd even ask us about. It was
Yeah.
just like, you produced the video for us, the video smashed it, we got loads of sign-ups, bale bale, everyone's happy. But like
Yeah.
later on down the line, things started to shift. Obviously with different social media platforms and TikTok and these sort of things started to shift. Now, that's another topic. Let's go back to the question that you asked about the issues community organizations are having. So community organizations often are led by small teams. Yeah, so you'll have like a figurehead who may be a teacher or a scholar who has devoted a lot of time in their life to go study, and they've come back now and they've wanted to set something up.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times they set something up without kind of going into politics, but like they don't really. A lot of them don't work with mosques. So they won't go into a mosque and become like, there's things at play here. So what ends up happening is they'll set up their own place and they'll set up their own institutes. And Saf, you've seen in the last 10 years how many institutes have popped up.
But do you think that's an issue? I'm going to continue on with your point, but
I think,
do you think it's a good thing that you get scholars that go away and they come back and then they no longer work with masajids and they just set up their own thing?
it's obviously you can look at it in both ways. You can say that, look, you've got there's some mosques that might not be catered towards some of the stuff that these institutes are doing in terms of activity and stuff like that. But I think, like, I look at your own example and look at what you're doing. You've studied, but you're very much in tune with the masjids as
Yeah.
opposed to setting up your own thing. And there's others that do that as well. But what's ended up happening for whichever reason is that all these places have popped up everywhere. And these institutes, like I said, you've got a main person, might be a sheikh or a teacher who's going, and then they've got a couple of people with them. Now, what ends up happening is that the funding model for these organizations essentially is wholly fundraising. Like
Right.
all these places have been set up by donations from public, most of them. So what ends up happening is that year on year they're under pressure to make sure that the revenue is high enough, that they've got all their costs covered, and
Yeah.
that creates pressure in terms of fundraising every single year. They've got to do it every year, no matter what. Now, before it was fine. 7 to 10 years ago, there might have already been a few organizations. So it might not have been as hard to do that. But now, because you've got more and more organizations vying for the same thing, essentially, and remember, you've also got charities as well that are kind of going towards the same pot.
Yeah.
It becomes very, very difficult. Now, as I mentioned, a lot of these organizations have small teams. These small teams consist of people who may have a 9 to 5. They
Yeah.
might work 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. And then on top of that, they're volunteering for your community organization.
And they got kids, and some of them have.
They've got
other
kids, they might have their
responsibilities.
own businesses,
Yeah.
they've got, they might be studying themselves, for example. So what ends up happening with a lot of these volunteers is they suffer from burnout. They suffer from burnout because they're just taking on too much. And what then ends up happening is that the jobs that are supposed to be very simple end up taking a long time because they're not getting done. And then what ends up happening is the teacher or the scholar ends up getting burnt out because they now have to do admin jobs when their focus should be on teaching or working on curriculum, for example. So that's one of the big issues, and what volunteer burnout ends up then doing is you end up getting like a revolving door of volunteers. People coming in, people coming out. And you've, mashallah, have served for many years in different organizations. You've probably seen this, like different volunteers come and go.
Yeah, many. Sheikh Ibrahim, once he said that, look, many people have come and many people have gone. And we've seen as well, people come, they get excited, they read the shoe, but when they get, down and dirty, when you got to go into the trenches, when you're getting phone calls, 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, and something needs to be ready by 7 in the morning, you have to do it. There's just no, there's no concept of, oh, but there's nothing else in your life but that thing. You know what I mean?